Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Florida Relocation Guide YouTube channel. My name is Adam Hancock, and today we are rounding out and completing our three-part series on the best place to live in all of Sarasota, Florida for 2023. Today is all about land and affordability. I'm going to walk through what I think is special about these categories for this list. I'm going to talk about the best ways to navigate this, the difference between the areas you should be looking at. I'm also going to talk about specific pricing in recent history, so really hope you enjoy this take, and let's get started. Okay, the first area I'd like to touch on when it comes to what is special about this category, what differentiates it, is the concept of the path is clear. And I'm calling it that because, the cool thing when I speak about affordability, and I'm framing some of the things, especially on part 3 of this video, these are offshoots of the concept of the economic value of the town. And we have some really clear predecessors of ideas that did well, that got really popular, that people really liked. And the junior versions of those, the Eastern versions of those, the next versions are really similar examples to what already happened. So it gives you a lot of credence to say, this is what it could potentially be. Oh, I understand that this builder moved out here too, and it's $100,000 cheaper than where they were here. So it doesn't feel like completely random. It doesn't feel like you're taking as much of a guess. It doesn't feel like it's in a silo, because you can simply say, this is a further version of what we 100% know works, and I'm going to save money, or I'm going to get more space, or I'm going to get something like that by doing this instead of that. So I think always having an example makes you feel a lot better about the real estate value. Okay, the second area that I think is special about the Sarasota Manatee Greater Metro is the idea of affordability and coastal proximity. It seems like that those do not come synonymous. But the thing with where all the suburbs, all the brand new master plan was built in Sarasota, the reason it was built where it's at is because the rest of the main meat of the area, literally some of the greatest locations in the entire country, were already built. But they're regular kind of normal neighborhoods. So South Sarasota, Pinecraft, where a lot of the Amish Mennonite community is, the middle of the road that's west of the interstate, west of 75, we'll show here in a box. A lot of that area is incredibly affordable because these are small single family homes. These are normal homes that were all resale, that were not as master planned, not as controlled. So all of the value and the changes in value and them increasing, if you can stay like 3 to 4 or 5 miles away from downtown and the beaches, it would all have to turn over and resale and the flip markets and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of this is still some of the most affordable price points in the entire town are on resale communities that are literally like 3 to 6 miles from the world-class top 10 beaches in the entire country. And then they've also built master plan like Welland Park and South Venice that give you much, much more affordable areas to build a new house, let alone downtown Venice, where the beaches lie, is technically the cheapest cost of living to walk to the beach from your house or your condominium if you live on the Gulf Coast in the entire state of Florida. So it's just unique that the reason that all the new suburbs are 20 to 45 minutes from the coast is because the part in between them and the coast was already built, and most of that is actually uniquely affordable. Okay, and the third area I want to mention before we get into the nitty-gritty of the living options is something I'm calling the country is not so country. And this one I've always kind of liked. So you can literally go 25 to 30 minutes east in the right direction in a couple different areas in Sarasota, which I'll mention, and get 5 to 15 acres, have farm animals, have a goat farm if you wanted to, and drive one city road and be at Siesta Key Beach in less than 20-30 miles. Lido Beach, Longboat Key, Anna Maria Island. Like, unbelievable. In my opinion, a lot of places in the country that you can get out and get away from people and feel like that. A lot of places in the country are actually way further. So there's unique parts of Sarasota where you can kind of have both. Obviously way trickier to navigate, way more scarce. It's a different kind of search relocating, especially. But it's not impossible, and I've mentioned a lot in the series that the geographic orientation of Sarasota kind of prevents you from being incredibly far from anything. And if you go west in the right direction, you get everything. It is possible to kind of marry those two in a exclusive, bougie coastal area that I think is going to get more and more hard to come by as we continue here in the future. Okay, now that we got our head around a little bit of these special characteristics, let's talk living options. I'm going to run you through a list that'll give you, a good concept of all of these, right? There's probably more than this list, but this will give you a good lay of the land. The first one I want to speak about is called Parrish, Florida. If you're not familiar with Parrish, Parrish is one of those junior suburbs. It's one of those ones that makes a lot more sense when something else was built in front of it. So when I was growing up, if you go northeast of where I stand here in downtown Sarasota, back up here, Lakewood Ranch, Florida, the #1 multi-gen master plan community in the entire United States, is northeast of where I stand here by about 9.5 to 10 miles. It's a big area. 30 plus communities. Oldest house was built in 1995. It's owned by one family. When I was growing up, that was the boonies. Before you could conceptualize it, it was really, really far. So what Parrish, Florida is it's further than that. Similar direction, further than that. So think about the evolution of that. It depends on your perspective. Once people got their head around Lakewood Ranch, they were already kind of okay with being in that area. But back in the day, Lakewood Ranch to Parrish was really hard to get to until they built the Fort Hammer Bridge. So now there's a bridge where now you can literally drive to Lakewood and keep driving and you end up in Parrish. But now people are like, okay, I'm cool with Lakewood, right? Because obviously it's super popular, it's #1. So now they're only comparing the distance between Lakewood Ranch and Parrish, and it's not that much further. The big difference is they're no longer looking at Parrish to town. It's only the difference between them. And parts of Lakewood Ranch, because it's so big, aren't that much further or aren't that much closer to the coast than Parrish in general, right? So it's that juxtaposition that allows Parrish to even have as much value as it does at all today. And what happened was builders in Lakewood Ranch, because it started getting a little bit more expensive, builders in Lakewood Ranch, like Neil and Taylor Morrison, etc., built sister communities in Parrish. So they existed at the same time. So people would go to Lakewood and they go to Parrish, view a sister community, the same exact model, it'd be $150,000 cheaper in Parrish. Now they can make a decision of like, okay, the builder is telling me this is the difference in value in the minds of the people. What do I value? Do I want a little less house, closer? Do I want a little whatever? None of these are that close anyway. They're already 30 minutes to town. So that's the evolution that creates a methodology where if you track with that, depending on the maturity of your search, it has value. You speak to some random buddy that I grew up with here, they're gonna act like it's so far from town that it's how mature are you in the thinking of it. That's where Parrish is affordable in perspective. It's affordable in the conversation that you valued the suburb below it and you're okay with this being a cheaper version. I wouldn't say it's affordable in the conversation of the totality of Florida. I'm just saying it's in perspective. So Parrish is #1, it's a junior suburb. I think it's a fantastic example of that conversation. Okay, #2 on this list, I'm going with Western Bradenton. So a lot of Lakewood Ranch is actually in Bradenton, but if you go west towards the coast, it offers a unique affordability and perspective to the alternative options. What you have basically coastal proximity here is you have the Sarasota part by trying to get as west as you can of the interstate, or west opposite camera here. You have the Venice part by going south, you get a little affordability. But Western Bradenton's a big enigma if you're not from here, because it is very urban. So it's an older area that's very urban, so you don't have as much master plan and controlled values, and all the homes don't look the same, and the average value is a lot less. And it's a lot less mature version than the western part of main Sarasota. Because the problem with the main part of Sarasota is where the beaches and the coast are, and you go west, it's everything. It's downtown Sarasota, it's the most popular part. So it's way more evolved. It's really high end, really upscale, really mature. And then South Sarasota is more like old blue collar suburbs. It's just more like old Florida style housing, including Venice. Where Western Bradenton is a lot more urban. It feels a lot more like St. Petersburg, Florida, or parts of Tampa. It's hard for people to get their mind around it. And it's still very much up and coming. It's a big divide in values. But with all of that being said, Western Bradenton, beyond people that, there's a level of Western Bradenton that's in vogue, right? It's very historical, it has a cool history, people are in love with it. If you value that, or you understand enough context to understand it. But if you're randomly looking in the area and you don't understand the values, the thing is, by going north of downtown and going west, that is probably one of the most up and coming areas. But it's also one of the most affordable areas to get coastal proximity. Because you go towards Anna Maria Island, you go towards downtown Bradenton, you have Bay Beach, you have all the same characteristics that make most of the Gulf Coast amazing, but you have a lot harder way to navigate housing because it's not as turnkey as areas that are way more evolved. So the risk you take in not knowing what it's going to be, by getting further north, you get far from what a lot of people deem important. You get far from downtown Sarasota, and you get far from Siesta Key and Lido Beach, and you get far from all that kind of stuff. But by going that direction, you get affordability on boating access to Manatee River, which is brackish and goes out to the Gulf. You get the bay, you get Anna Maria Island. If you lean into areas that other people maybe deem as a sacrifice in, one house on the street's a mansion, one house on the street someone's passed down generationally forever, like a lot of cities are, then I would say Western Bradenton, if I articulated that any way that made sense, Western Bradenton could be something to look at in that conversation, but you probably will need a lot more guidance in navigating that if you're not from here. Okay, and then I wanted to mention the Gulf Gate area. So Gulf Gate is an area in South Sarasota that's not quite Palmer Ranch. This is one of the areas that you can kind of look at on a map and look at on real estate values as one of those very coastal cities in South Sarasota, just south of the South Siesta Key Bridge that was already there. A lot of like just old school 1,800 to 2,500 square foot single families. You had actually some space there because when they used to build the homes, a lot of them were on bigger pieces of land. A lot more neighborhoods than like HOA controlled gated communities with amenities. So it's a lot more like boroughs you're driving through, house to house very much, but look at where it sits on a map. So Gulf Gate would be another area to target resale affordability. If you catch the right one, you might catch a renovation or one that you can kind of make your own and that kind of thing. But that is going to offer you similar affordability to Western Bradenton in a lot of senses, but a lot more of the homes look similar. Like when you drive over there, the feel of it it feels a lot more old than Western Bradenton does. So that would give you a good comparison to the two areas in very different locations on a map, but both very Western. Okay, fourth up, the first three we talked about affordability. The fourth one, I want to talk about that land conversation in unique ways. There's really three ways mainly to do it, but two that I really stick out as far as the unique characteristics. And they're called Fruitville East and Bee Ridge East. So it's important to understand the grids of Sarasota. Two ways to get north and south, really, the main ways. The interstate, I-75, runs north and south up over here. The coastal version, Tamiami Trail US 41, runs over here. And then the only way to get to the coast is you got to go east to west. So you got to cut from those roads over to the other roads. And, in Lakewood Ranch, you have, State Road 64, State Road 70, University, if you're familiar with that area. But below University is a road called Fruitville. Fruitville, if you live anywhere in that area, that's what you come down to shoot over to downtown Sarasota, Lido Beach. That would be your entry really to Siesta Key unless you're south. And then the southern version of that, because it's all grids, right? So you keep going down, you got more east to west. But down here you have Bee Ridge. So two different ways to go to the coast, east to west. So if the coast is this way, Fruitville and Bee Ridge, I'll show a map better than my hands here. Then you go the opposite direction, you go east. Both of those offer very unique, spacious environments. Fruitville East is the one I was talking about that's really unique. You keep driving, like you go, that's what I'm saying, like you take the same road to Siesta Key, Lido, or whatever, you go the opposite direction, you just get a little bit past the stuff, you get full-on country property. You can get 5 acres out there and not be that far removed from town, which I think if you're in Sarasota based, there's a lot of places you can get country property in Florida that's way cheaper than here. But if you're Sarasota based, to get all the beach and all that within like 30, 40 minutes is incredibly in vogue to me. Bee Ridge would offer something similar but south. So one would be, I would say, shooting over to Lido Beach. One would be shooting over to southern Siesta Key. But Bee Ridge East actually was a lot newer. They built like an extension where it was, so there's potential of new construction over there, golf over there. That's where like a lot of you'll see new areas, a lot of like churches and stuff are built because they do these big pieces of property. But Bee Ridge East is another option that if you look at these two on a map will show. Look how close they feel, but you can get a lot of land out there, and then you can get different kinds. You could get country stuff, but you can get a little closer, and you can get more neighborhoods. Then maybe you're just seeking a fourth of an acre or half an acre, and you just don't want 15 feet between the neighbors. So those two I really like. The last one, as we conclude here, Mayaca City. Mayaca City is the low-hanging fruit. You go east farther, you got Mayaca City. But the cool thing about Sarasota is you go east further, you just kind of get more country. Or like Naples, for example, it opens to completely different areas, right? You get like Lehigh Acres, it just keeps going. Here it's just more versions of the country. So you can kind of back your way closer to the interstate and decide what you really value. Again, you could say like a little less acreage, get closer to the stuff, or you can go say like, I don't mind going 2 miles further and getting 2 acres. So that would be my conclusion of this kind of random affordability land conversation. All right, lastly, as I wrap up the part 3 video, let me mention those real estate prices just to give you as much value as possible. Okay, so remember Parrish was our first one, our junior suburb. The median sale price in the last 6 months was $459K. Not the cheapest in the world, but remember that Lakewood Ranch was over $650,000 as a median price. Western Bradenton, I'd mentioned that area, median price of just $335,000 over the last 6 months. The Gulf Gate area, that southern Sarasota area close to the coast, $415K. And then the Eastern Country property with a minimum of a half an acre or over came in at $902,000. All right, my friends, that is a wrap for this video. I really hope you enjoyed the format. If you did, please consider subscribing and liking if you haven't already done so. Secondly, if my team can assist you at all, any real estate needs, buying, selling, relocating, anything in between, please consider reaching out. We'll put all our contact information here. Anything on this list, any more information, even if you're far out in your search and you'd like help navigating that, I think we have the best in the business and the smartest in the business at doing that particular thing. And finally, the sunshinestateco.com, doing some reformatting and shuffling there. But my website offers newsletter sign up that's different than most things we do on YouTube, analytical tools that are free, relocation guides that are free, and I'm going to build that out much, much more. So please consider bookmarking that and keeping engaged in that if you're actively searching. More importantly, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.